Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this channel we provide the in-depth knowledge of different programming languages which differentiate you with others. In our series of C++ classes, today we are going to discuss what is the difference between structure and classes of C++. Now what is structure? Structure is a collection of dissimilar data type. It is opposite to array. What is an array? Array is a collection of similar data type, whereas structure is a collection of dissimilar data type. So far, when it was time to collect dissimilar data type, we used what? Structures, whereas to group data and functions we used classes. The basic difference between structure and classes is structure only holds the data, whereas whereas classes hold the data as well as function. Now one interesting fact I am going to share with you. Now do you agree with this point that most of the C++ programmers are C programmers? Fine. When we come down to structure, in C, what is structure? Structure is a collection of dissimilar data type. Now when we move down to C++, what is structure? Structure is a user defined data type. Now what is class? Class is again a user defined data type. Now अब हुआ क्या कि इन्होंने क्या किया कि C++ के अंदर स्ट्रक्चर को इन्होंने इम्प्लीमेंट किया क्लासेस के रूप में. Getting my point? What they think, why you want to unlearn the things that you have already learned in C language. C के अंदर हमने स्ट्रक्चर पढ़ा. स्ट्रक्चर इज ए कलेक्शन ऑफ डिसिमिलर डेटा टाइप. इट होल्ड्स द डेटा. अब अगर वो C++ में आके बोलते हैं कि देयर इज एडवांस वर्जन ऑफ स्ट्रक्चर, इन C++ स्ट्रक्चर यू विल हैव डेटा एज वेल एज मेंबर फंक्शन. मीन्स C का स्ट्रक्चर अलग होगा और C++ का स्ट्रक्चर होगा, तो C++ का स्ट्रक्चर अलग होगा, तो देयर विल बी ए लॉट ऑफ कंफ्यूजन. सो व्हाट दे से कि जो स्ट्रक्चर आपने पढ़ लिया है आप उसी को पढ़ के रखिए. हम C++ में एक नया यूजर डिफाइंड डेटा टाइप इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं, दैट इज नोन एज क्लासेस. तो व्हाट इज क्लासेस? क्लासेस इज ए यूजर डिफाइंड डेटा टाइप which holds the data and function all together. In fact, we can use structure in almost exactly the same way that we use classes. The only formal difference between a class and a structure is that in a class the members are private by default, whereas in structure they are public by default. So this is the only basic one difference between structures of C++ and classes of C++. What is the difference? If we are not declaring any access specifier at the time of a declaration of a class or a structure, in classes the data members are by default private, whereas in structure the data members are always public. In fact, we can use structure in almost exactly the same way that we use classes. Means जहाँ पे हम C++ के अंदर structures use कर सकते हैं वहाँ हम classes use कर सकते हैं, और जहाँ classes use कर सकते हैं वहाँ structure use कर सकते हैं. Means structures के अंदर भी C++ के structures के अंदर भी क्या होता है कि data members होते हैं और member functions होते हैं like classes. The only basic difference is in structure the default access specifier is public, whereas in classes the default access specifier is private. The only formal difference between a class and a structure is that in a class the members are private by default, while in structure they are public by default. Let's take an example. Here we are declaring a class called sample, private int data, public void show. I think there is no doubt in this class. What is data here? Data is a private data member of the sample class, whereas show is a public member function of the sample class. In class all members, whether we are talking about data or a function, are private by default. We may drop the keyword private while declaring the classes, but it's a good practice to use keyword private explicitly for increasing the code readability. What does it means? We can drop the private keyword at the time of declaring the class, but it's a good practice to write private explicitly, it will increase the code readability. By seeing the access specifier, by default जैसी कोई चीज नहीं होगी. It is looking private, okay fine, this member is private. If it is written public, okay fine, this member is public. Then in class, all members data and functions are private by default. We may drop the keyword private while declaring the class, but it's a good practice to use keyword private explicitly for increasing the code readability. Same thing if we talk about structure. What is struct? Struct is a keyword. Struct sample private in data public void show. The only difference is in place of class we are writing struct here. Otherwise everything is exactly same. In structure, all members, whether data member or member functions, are public by default. We may drop the keyword public while declaring the structure, but it's a good practice to use keyword public explicitly for increasing the code readability. Same as classes. Note, which is very important, though in principle we can use a structure at every place in a class is used. Read carefully. Though in principle we can use a structure at every place a class is used, whether we are talking about classes, whether we are talking about inheritance, whether we are talking about anything. में जहाँ क्लास यूज़ कर सकते हैं वहाँ पे अपन स्ट्रक्चर्स यूज़ कर सकते हैं, और जहाँ स्ट्रक्चर यूज़ कर सकते हैं वहाँ पे अपन क्लासेस यूज़ कर सकते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ C++. C के स्ट्रक्चर डिफरेंट है. इन C स्ट्रक्चर वी कैन हैव ओनली डेटा. व्हाई? बिकॉज उस समय ये सारी चीज़ें इंट्रोड्यूस ही नहीं की हुई थी. एक डेटा होगा, डेटा के साथ मेंबर फंक्शन होंगे, मेंबर फंक्शन किस पे वर्क करेगा? डेटा के ऊपर. टू keep the data secure from the outside interference. That is why this private, public and protected comes into same. Usually programmers prefer to use structure to group data and classes to group both data and function, but it's not a rule, but you can use structure in place of classes. Any doubt you can ask me, otherwise we will move further. So what is the basic difference between structure and classes? Structures are nothing but a user defined data type, whereas classes are nothing but a user defined data type. The only one difference between structure and class in C++ is in structure by default the access specifier is public. What does it mean? If we are not specifying at the time of declaration of a structure with any member, whether it's a private or public or protected, so by default it is treated as public, whereas in class by default it is treated as private. Fine. Thank you.